Okay, I think that's us live. Welcome everybody once again this evening for a change. And it's great to have back with us, obviously, Magilla, Millbilly, and Joyce. Welcome, gentlemen. Nice to have you here with us. Let me put myself in the far corner there. That's better. In the right way around. And we were just having apologies for running a bit late. I had to try and find the dog lead so that the dog could be taken for a walk, but everything's good now. So we were just chatting just on air. I'm struggling to find any photographs of anything that resembles the tire track mill, Billy. You were saying that you've had a look at every vehicle on the Avery salvage yard. You'd got a slide up. Can I pop it up for you?
Top left, we got the top two left photos are from the four-wheelers inside the Avery garage. Then we have the front loader that's parked inside the blue shed. And then we have the excavator. We have Ma's golf cart, Barb's golf cart, Teresa's tire, and then the imprint. And none of these tread patterns match what was left in the mud. So I've yet to find a vehicle that's associated with the Avery property that could have made that, which means it came from an outside source.
Yeah, I mean, for me, there were two things that didn't make sense for me. Where's Magilla? There he is. There was two things that didn't make sense for me, and that was one, the sort of the sawtooth wave on the side, but also those hexagonal shapes that, as you say, they look almost like bolts that were the sort of when you get those special winter tires with the studs in them.
Mm-hmm. Except the studs are never that size.
No,
that would be made for like destroying a road.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm still thinking there's a good chance they're off-road tires. I think there was one person who shared with me quite a bit. I'm trying to remember his name. Avery
Wave?
It was either Avery Wave or...
yeah, I know them.
Yeah, Avery Wave was talking to me a bunch, but I'm not sure it was about the tires. But we did find some off-road tires with some pretty extreme treads, none that matched, but there are definitely a lot of small tire companies that make four-wheel drive all-terrain tires.
Yeah. And Jerice, I mean, this Magilla fella, he's a gorilla, but my goodness, does he tweet a lot? I was trying to find pictures of the that he presented last week, and you must tweet about once an hour, Magilla.
Well,
trying to keep track, yeah.
I'm currently between two pretty large assignments, so I am a software engineer, and I'm always on my computer, and if I don't have work to do, I tend to obsess about different things. And this is so during COVID, unfortunately, I sort of got distracted and was obsessing about the pandemic, and I think we lost a rule to that too. And then I'm finally back to trying to push this case forward because I'm really frustrated. I think I'm very good at like seeing more perhaps in evidence than other people do. I think Jeriz is too. And as a development engineer, we tend to break things and then have to figure out why they broke. So, it sort of gives you a set of skills that are a little different. I tend to stay away from having to read large volumes because that tends not to be where my skill set is.
Sure.
So here we have
Here
we have I found a tire tread library And there were ways to describe the tire tread. So if we look at the tire tread and we ignore the bolts, I think it looked the most like column 5.
Mm-hmm.
But even there, it has some irregularities because it seems like the pattern is irregular. It's more sort of organic or tiger stripe like than column 5. The hexagonal bolts, I did look up full track vehicles to see if any of them look like that, and they really don't. The bolts don't like extend down through the track. The track has to roll over gears, so the backside has to have some sort of chain on it, and you can't like. You don't use bolts like this to connect it to the chain because it interfere with the chain's ability to intermesh with the gear teeth. So this doesn't look like a full track vehicle. Or when I say full track, full or half track, because a half track will be a full track on one, either the front or back wheels. I also looked at snowmobiles. It didn't match those. Jorbiz and I looked at Polaris Ranger trucks, and I looked a little bit at Arctic Cats, and it didn't match those. And so it's a rare tire, and I think it's a good chance it has something to do with off-roading. I think, and I think it might be home customized with bolts for some reason.
Right. Okay. And obviously even the police themselves have gone to the trouble of making this cast because they're obviously interested in this, and clearly the police themselves don't know what vehicle this is from.
Right, and I think they might have realized what I did from the photo that Jerry's dug up, that there's evidence in the photo that the grass was freshly crushed. So this is contemporary with when we think the Jeep was planted. That green grass being crushed in the photo, and then the tread is very unusual.
And can I also just add, as a personal delight to me, I love watching a Canadian program called Man Tracker, and that just reminded me of that. Has anybody else seen that program called Man Tracker?
No.
It's a Canadian tracker who used to be involved in mountain rescue. They get people, they give them like a 5-minute head start and a map, and they have to get to a certain destination. And Man Tracker, pursuit of Terence Grant, a guy called Terry Grant goes after them, and he uses all of those sort of skills by looking at, for example, if grass has been recently trodden on, it not only gives him the fact that it's been trodden on, but often a direction of travel. And so it just fascinates me to looking at this stuff, because it's certainly not stuff I've dug into, But anyway, sorry for interrupting, but I just wanted to say I'm a big fan of the program Man Tracker. So
yeah, I've seen a few episodes of it. It seems like the Canadian, so the CBC is, I think it's connected to the BBC somehow, and there's a sharing between Australia, Canada, and the UK.
Yep.
And then in the US, I don't think we get quite as much of it, though we are getting more Canadian programs recently.
Anyway, sorry, I'll not interrupt.
No, so we can move to another topic. Just check if anybody in the audience has anything new on this. This is still something that could help identify the accomplice of the RAV4 planter. Yep.
As I say, I looked it up myself, and I think I found of all the places I looked, there was a photograph of a vehicle that seemed to have the kind of edge, possibly, but and that was on a website called Officer, to do with police vehicles and tires going on,
Yeah. So here was Here was one that Avery Wave came up with. It actually has the hexagonal rubber parts, but there's no normal tread between them.
No.
And this was actually a military truck, I think he told me. So,
Right.
yeah, I think he's got. But that means it was made for all terrain. It's not exactly the most beautiful military truck.
Imagine that going on the Avery sales yard. Hello.
Well, this looks like it's made for the desert, so it's got desert sand color.
Yep.
But looks awful hot for the desert. Of course, comfort isn't the only thing.
Okay, we've got a question from.
He thought it might be this Manitowoc armored vehicle, which.
Oh, that's hilarious, isn't it? They spent how many thousands on that?
Well, it's important for when you're deer hunting.
Yeah.
It's like, the next time Avery tries to get away, they go after him in this thing.
It's like a riot vehicle, isn't it?
It looks like an armored personnel carrier. It looks like it's got a full mounted, or I don't know if there's a machine gun up there, but it's got a machine gun mount and a manhole.
Launcher.
Yeah, it's a little discouraging to think that sheriff's office has one of those.
Here's a quick question from T1. Were there any vehicles used in the quarry or equipment that could potentially have these tire tracks? For example, Josh Redant.
Yeah, so I'll try to bring Joe Riz on this. He investigated the quarry vehicles.
There are no, there aren't no quarry vehicles with these tracks. They're not clear what quarry vehicles there are, to be honest.
Right.
There is a vehicle down near the apparent burn barrels that I think Jerez said are actually much larger than burn barrels. But
yeah, I did comparative size analysis, and it was bigger than normal than a golf cart. What everybody was saying, but it's too far out to zoom in and check out the treads on these wheels.
And then we did find a Ranger ATV on the film roll taken of the Redon deer cam, and Jerez he hunted that down.
Yeah, that's that Polaris Ranger that was used, but that also doesn't have the right tread. So they use that for all kinds of to bring stuff around, to carry bags, to prop up the for the windshields and all that. And they drove all over around that with that thing.
Yeah, we think that is law enforcement's ATV or UTV, I guess they call it.
Yeah.
So we still have no idea who laid these tracks, and we have been looking. Hopefully, the audience is looking too.
Well, Sean has a question. Could the tread have come from a dirt bike?
Too big.
Yeah.
Yep. It would have to be very, very wide tires, wouldn't it, for bike?
Well, they're making bike tires wider now. The more off-road you are, the wider they're making them, so that you don't get in a lot of trouble. Also, electric dirt bikes are getting even wider tires. I think because it's attracting a crowd that probably really shouldn't be on dirt bikes.
Sure. I was just wondering as well. These assuming that the hexagonal shape is some sort of nut and bolt that's potentially worn down.
Yeah.
Is it possible that they could have been? It could have been done aftermarket. In other words, the tires bought and then these bolts put in them. Yeah.
So did we go through that last time? I had a whole thread showing sort of crazy things people do in Wisconsin, adding studs, especially for driving on frozen lakes, where they really want to dig into the ice to make sure they maintain traction.
Right. Yeah.
But it's very possible. usually those studs are more evenly distributed across the tread, not just on the edge.
Yeah.
So I'm not really sure. I'm pretty sure. I also have been talking to some websites that sell off-road Jeep tires to see if they could help identify it. And so far, they've enjoyed that I've asked them and have shown some interest, but I haven't heard anything back from them.
Sure.
So what would be the real motivation for law enforcement to get this casting out? That's what I was wondering.
Well, I think Jerez is probably the most familiar with the reporting pattern, but I will say that the people who probably discovered it at the back of the yard were probably not this group of lead detectives and this group of Manitowoc County cops that are causing all the trouble. They were probably like cops called into the scene who were just trying to do their diligence in the area they were in, the low visibility area they were assigned, and they found suspicious things.
Yeah, they probably were looking for, like, if the RAF was in that space for a moment of time, and that would match the RAF, then would show it with, planted.
Yeah, because the area this is in is the area of the 3 HRD dog alerts that are on Conveyor Road.
Yeah, exactly.
I was going to say, would it be fair to say that as far as some law enforcement were concerned, they came into the scene simply wanting to be, to do, as you say, to do due diligence, and it was only Manitowoc Sheriff's Department that were actually saying within a couple of hours, have we got Stephen Avery in custody?
Right. So to the Calumet Sheriff's Office, Calumet County. Steve Avery was nothing. He was pretty much off their screen. So they were solved. I think in most cases we're going to find, other than Wiegert sort of getting dragged into the weeds, that the Calumet County Sheriff's Office personnel are pretty trustworthy. And I think my feeling is the Manitowoc Sheriff's Office is completely untrustworthy.
Mm-hmm.
And Kratz, for some reason, was also very untrustworthy right from the get-go. And I'm not sure why, but he definitely looks like he wants to. He's very worried about ensuring he gets a conviction, and he's willing to overlook anything.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Anyway, so I'll put that. Oh, it's what's going on here? I need to do that, don't I? There you go. Sorry.
Okay, can you still see my window, or we could go through?
Yes, your window's up now. Yeah.
Okay, so one thing I did was I went through a big old folder of old pictures just to,
all right,
and just to give us something to talk about. I also have a big list of topics I'm preparing. I guess it's in here. That I think maybe the defense hasn't paid attention to.
Yep.
One of them, we could talk about scent dog track number 1.
Mm-hmm.
More and more, I'm beginning to think scent dog track number 1 is Ryan Hilligus bringing somebody to see the RAV and then leaving.
Right.
And it's probably on November 4th. Early on, I thought that might be the person who planted the RAV leaving. And it may be, but what we've discovered is we think some second vehicle had come into the yard with them, at least to the point of that tire print. So what I'm thinking is that would tend to make track number 1 have a different purpose. So let me just pull up. Let's see.
Can I just quickly mention while you do that? It's now 2 weeks to the day, on obviously April 24th, when we won't be doing a marathon, but something very similar. We'll we've got together with like some Millbilly, and I see Diane in the little Misty in the chat there, and hopefully we'll get Linda and Sharon Sunshine, Foul Play, and a few other of the channels, Jerome. Apologies if I've missed anybody, but hopefully we'll get a 12-hour session going. So I'm hoping you guys are going to be around a fortnight today, running from 9 o'clock Manitowoc time in the morning till 9 in the evening. Now, I realize that's somewhat problematic for some people, particularly Australia, because that Manitowoc 9 in the morning is actually midnight, but going through till midday on the Monday. So hopefully we'll have a little a sort of mini marathon for the Dudes Advocacy Foundation. And I just wanted to point out, just 2 weeks to go. Hopefully I'll start to put together some sort of lists of who's on and what times, etc., etc. So anyway, sorry, just to squeeze that in. Sorry, Magilla, it's all yours.
Okay, and of course I'll be glad to help any way I can.
Brilliant.
I miss Ericosi as much as
much
as anybody on this game. So so this is track number 1. I'll just give you a quick rundown instead of reviewing the literature. But they bring Loof actually near the vicinity of where the RAV4 was parked. The RAV4 is already gone, though. And a blue tarp that was thrown over the RAV4 is laying around. Loof comes to the location of the blue tarp, sniffs around it, and then decides to immediately go over the berm and works her way to the west into the woods, works her way down along a sort of a creek bed to a location that intersects with a drive that goes through the woods. And from there, she takes a path out the entrance exit road to the quarry, out to Jamba Creek Road, where she heads north. The drawing's a little from there. She actually gives a no trail indication, and the handler Fauski actually takes Loof across the road, and they try to search to see if they can pick up any more trails. And eventually, she picks up a trail back near Wilmer Siebert's house, which is this one small property right there at the corner. The white lines, I think, are his property lines. She skirts his property, and then she finds a second trail back to where the RAV4 was that does not coincide with the first one, but does cross with it a couple times. There's a suggestion that she skirted Wilmer Siebert's house, but after reading it closely, that might be her just hunting for a trail, because Fauski's having her hunt for a trail. This one little loop here is actually a good place for a car to be parked. There's very little dirt there, and there's actually a spot where there's a big clearing of dirt, and she could be walking around a car. So somebody might have come in, parked a car, moved the car up to this trail in the woods, walked up, and then we see that the end point of the track doesn't match the location of the RAV4. As I said, as Jerez and I have been working this, we uncovered evidence, especially with this casting, that probably if the white Jeep came in, the Wilmer Siebert story is telling us the white Jeep followed. We think it actually entered Conveyor Road and probably parked somewhere on the base of Conveyor Road without getting too far into the salvage yard. So this is probably not the path that was taken to leave the yard. Also, this path is leaving a trail that's associated with the scent object. After studying the rules of what we think Loof might have changed to, Loof was scented at S, and at least got off the yard with the trail associated with the scent object. And then we have her coming back but not at the right location. So I'm really beginning to think that this trail is Ryan coming back on the 4th of November. After the flyover fails, he gets called. It takes him about an hour and 4 minutes to start getting those. My cell phone is roaming calls. I think that's him arriving in this vicinity, and I think he has somebody with him, and I think he's trying to say these are the steps I took, and trying to sort of sell a story that he's recreating a path with. And now I've got my Ryan Did It hat on, which you got to watch me. I tend to put that hat on pretty easily.
I think, I would, sorry to interrupt because there's a question, but I would just like to point out that I remember a while back when Kathleen Zellner tweeted about the fact that it's pretty obvious who the suspect is, and I'm like, wow, I've got like 5 suspects here, and not counting Kucharski's aliens. So I I have no problem with you putting your Ryan hat on. Brown Knee, thank you to Jazz for alerting me. Posted a question, Brown Knee. Is there a road track through the woods, or did the dog go through the trees? I'm not quite sure what that's actually asking. So, through the woods or through the trees? I suppose
there's trails through the woods, but it's not actual big enough for a vehicle to drive through, but a small ATV possibly could. Okay. There's also a little creek that runs in the area.
Now that Jerez did look at this with me, and we did find an older satellite photo, and this main drag, like the road that goes into the woods, if you look to where the paths cross here, that's actually a 2-lane road that used to be a main road for the heavy equipment.
That's correct. It goes between Conveyor Road and the conveyor that runs into the Avery property. But just off of that, there was a small trail that goes towards that other road.
Yeah. So we were thinking that a vehicle might have parked there to try to stay out of sight. And that the 2 paths crossing there might be getting in and out of the vehicle. And if the vehicle had escaped, it would have left a faint scent once they're in the vehicle. So the track out to Jamba Creek Road might be fainter. And while it's fainter and also not that recent, it's going to be blown around more and maybe be swept by water more down into places where water drains. So I think the big thing on this is it's still a mystery who would have skirted Wilmer's property. It's possible they came in here, stopped at this first location while Ryan tells a little bit of a story, goes to the second location in the woods. He hikes on foot up to the place marked E and emerges near the pond. And then it's interesting that the track was cut off by the police when they reemerged into the pond. So the track doesn't really end here. They just take Loof away. It'd been interesting to see if Loof goes back to the starting point or goes somewhere else, but we'll never know. And I think the place with S, it might be them going back to where the car was and then leaving. And that Loof follows. So what we found out with Loof, I don't think we've ever done a talk about what I called anatomy of a negative scent. But Loof will search an area pretty good before giving a negative scent indication. So when Loof is losing scent, all of a sudden Loof will sort of look around quite a bit and then pick up scent again. And it takes her maybe 2 loops around a place and looking back before they actually stop. So
it just bothers me because scent is left from your whole body, not just your feet.
Primarily from your feet. This is
your scent comes off your body and then it settles on the ground.
No. So this is something we should go through. Let me see if I got. I did resurface this, so I think I can pull it up. Let me see. 39
Just a
Magilla.
quick question. This
Fern,
path through the woods. Again, there was a follow-up question of whether it's whose property is it on, and are there any gates?
So we're not quarry. We're down to
We're down
property.
Crow. Yeah. Okay.
It's well, it was, and I think it, except for Wilmer's property, which is that one
Yes.
small scrap.
Yeah.
Okay, so
corner
this
lot.
is this
You know,
is
there are
this-
no gates to stop you from entering the quarry on either Jambo Creek or Q. You can drive right in. You still can drive right in to this day.
Yeah.
and anywhere where you think cremains might have been dropped. Also, the dog handling expert said a modern HRD dog can find cremains that are more than 10 years old.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so one of the things when I was researching dog trails was a lot of this was actually developed during World War I and World War II, which actually a lot of technology was. And there was this German colonel named Conrad Most, and he was very curious about how dog trails work. So he made this this trolley that you could sit on. You see where he calls it the float appliance or track layer, where you can suspend yourself above the ground and go from one place to another to see if a dog could follow the track. And then he made this other contraption. You can see this. This is like a human step applier, but all the shoe steps are cleaned before they use it. And all it does is crush vegetation. And what they found was when the person moving was up in the trolley, that no dog could follow his track. So if you look, without touching the ground, there was no track.
You also got to take in consideration that when that test was performed, the way dogs are trained now and back in 2005 are way different. They're way better. It all depends on how a dog is trained and the handler.
Well, I'd like to see somebody prove that to me.
Because I recently
the Nazis spent quite a bit on this this study, and I see no modern evidence of research that's at the quality of this. But I understand that there may be more modern evidence. I have looked for it. The other thing is he built this wheel thing, which was interesting. And if he connected the track with the wheel thing, which is only going to leave a vegetative scent, the dogs could follow it. So it showed that the tracking dogs were always following a mix of odors from damaged vegetation on the ground and primarily from scent left by the lower legs and shoes without contact to the ground. And so this idea that you're shedding skin from your entire body and leaving scent is not supported by this older research.
I love that photograph of the wheel. And I'm reminded of Nancy Sinatra. These boots were made for walking. Well, not necessarily.
Well, he almost looks like something out of a Monty Python episode.
It doesn't.
It's like, oh yeah, going. But you can laugh so much. But I mean, it's a well-designed experiment, I think, and I haven't seen somebody do the same design and prove a dog could follow it now. It's possible if you trained it to follow these tracks, it might find subtle effects that it could follow. But at that time, and dogs were used to track the enemy, so it was a time of serious research. And they were our enemy at the time. So maybe not everybody listening, but I think everybody sitting here. So we talked a little bit about track one. Are there any questions about track one? So if we do accept that this, also if we talk about scent contamination, like transfer of scent to, say, Ryan. The work of Conrad Most is saying his feet are the thing that really have to get contaminated. So he has to be wearing his shoes on her floors that her bare feet might have walked on. He has to be walking in socks or barefoot on her floors.
Do you recall what time this started?
This track was, this was the very, so we're right here in the dog report. So this is 10:35 a.m. Track one's on the 7th.
And this is precisely after Ryan Hilgis and Scott Blodorn are let on the property. Got to remember that day they sent up. Eventually, there was teams of A, B, C, D, and then they added E and F later. But Team A was on the northwest. Team B was on the northeast. And then C and D, where we'll be covering the southwest and southeast. And it just makes no sense because on those search reports, they got Bushman's writing on it, and he labels that he's on Jambo Creek, which is a lie. Because Team A was sent to the northwest quadrant, and the audio we have for that day paints a complete different picture of what actually occurred. Just like we got all the evidence photos of all the firearms that were collected on the 7th, and thankfully they wrote what time it was when they collected everything, so we can know where Colborne, Link, and Tyson were, and when they actually went to Cuss Road.
Right, but you're talking about the teams of HRD dogs now.
No, I'm talking about they had private searchers, and they had what? Firefighters teamed up. It seems like all of Manitowoc was in Team A because there was the 3 Calumet County sheriffs that were assigned to teams B, C, and D. And then Bushman was head of Team A. Called in for a special assignment.
Right, he's the one that ends up being standing at the Cuss Road. So I think we actually looked. So this is the scent dogs. I know you guys have found some reports that I don't have as much fluency with. But I think if we look at the end of this report, let me see. Or maybe it's the start of the next leg. This is, I'm thinking of a different place.
Okay.
So from here, they actually go to the negative scent. So this is her first thing. She checked in. They sent her to where the RAV4 was, and it doesn't look like this isn't. I was remembering a different track. So she cut her track off when she ended up back where she started. So there might be some indication that she felt like she was back where she started, but she actually isn't.
Sorry, Miguel. Another quick question, and a good one as well. Another one from Brown Knee. Getting back to how the dogs track scent, asks the ability of dogs. Does it change depending on the type of surface that they're following on, i.e., like a dirt track, quarry track, woodland floor?
The more vegetation there is, the more the scent is able to be absorbed.
That I mean, that's what I would have assumed as well. You know that there must be some substances. You know, going back to
what do you mean by absorbed? It's actually the more vegetation.
If it's tracking the actual person, like if it's a missing person, their scent is going to be thrown off of their whole body. They use the toe of the person's shoe because that's going to be their strongest scent.
Right. There's actually an amazing number of scent glands in your feet, or sweat glands in your feet, which is something I think people are surprised to find out.
Not my feet.
But when you say absorbed,
It's just
the
like
more
when
the
it's
more
just like when
vegetative track will be easier to follow. Is what
it's just like if like canine search dogs, police, when they have a suspect that runs from a scene, exits the vehicle, they take the dog to the vehicle, obtain its scent, and then send it on its way.
But
It
if they
depends.
run on concrete,
I'm just saying.
it'll be harder to
Ryan
track.
Hilgis
Right.
and Scott Blodorn were on the property prior to this scent track being run. All of them. They were there for an hour. They came back later on in the day, were there for another hour. What were they doing? And not to mention, the morning of the 7th, you hear Wiegert in the background of a transmission call saying they just found out that Teresa and Scott have been sexually active. And then Scott and Ryan show up.
Yeah, they were leading a search team, weren't they? The private search team.
That's why when Mike and Ryan are being interviewed by the news and they ask Ryan, "Oh, you've been on the property before," Mike had no clue what was going on because he wasn't with him.
I was going to ask that exact question. You know, I'm a big Mike Holbach fan, obviously, and I was just going to ask you. You know, is there any evidence of Mike being so? Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, he does seem a bit surprised, doesn't he? And this whole business of them looking at one another looked a bit strange. But thanks for answering that one. That was actually going through my. Hey, Millbilly, great minds must think alike, mustn't they?
Okay, before we get off this, I just want to make sure I understood Millberry's point. Millbilly's, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
You're saying that when there's vegetation, the scent's easier to follow, right?
It's more likely. Like if you were walking through a desert.
No, I agree with that. It's just you use the word absorbed.
Yeah.
And absorb might indicate it would like take it away.
No.
So I just want to make sure
it's easier for it to be left.
Right.
More likely for the dog to track it because there's more things for it to fall on.
That's consistent with my research. So
yes.
I just wanted to make sure I understood what you meant by absorbed.
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely brilliant.
Okay, so
there was another, and I don't know if this is going to interrupt your flow, Magilla.
I don't. We're looking for new topics. So.
There was a question again about the Yanda burn barrel. About could it be that the bones that were found in the burn barrel were planted? I've always leant towards the idea that the burn barrel was actually used to dump the bones behind Stephen's garage, rather than being planted in that barrel because somebody didn't know which burn barrel to put them in and didn't know which one was Steve's property.
Okay, so this is a topic that, as it would be, Jerez and I have been looking at.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so there's always been this question of why are there bones in the Jonda burn barrel, right? I mean, it doesn't make sense. And I developed a working theory a long time ago on this. Let me go to my. I have two working theories. One for Bobby did it, and one for Ryan did it. So, I think you have to understand when a working theory is just something that'll suggest where to look for evidence. And if you find evidence that fits your working theory, it might tend to reinforce your belief in the working theory. But the working theory is not necessarily saying I believe either one. I'm still trying to figure out. I think they're the most likely suspects, and I'm trying to figure out which one did it. So under the theory that Ryan did it, my theory of the burn barrel in the Jonda burn barrel, we used to call it, I think we've been calling it Dassey sometimes now that Bobby's more of a suspect. But the Jonda burn barrel, my theory, if Ryan did it, is he tried to put some cremains in that burn barrel to make Stephen look guilty. The problem was he did it before the police came by, and all he had was the Auto Trader paperwork, and the auto trader paperwork gave B. Jonda's address, and he also had her camera, so we knew what was her last visit. So all he had was a picture of the van and Barb Jonda's address, and then I think he buried the cremains at the Cuss Road burial site because the ground was easy to move. And then he put some of the cremains in their burn barrel at the address he thought the last visit was. So that's my theory with Ryan.
Mm-hmm.
It would explain why they're at the wrong house, because he did it before he knew Stephen Avery's address was 12932,
Mm-hmm.
and hers is 12930A, and that's also where the van was. And he had her camera, he had her auto trader paperwork.
Mm-hmm.
If it's Bobby, my Bobby did it theory is that Bobby did it by accident. He was handling cremains at the cremain site. I still think the cremains were buried at the Cuss Road burial site based on Loof Track 6. But after that, he accidentally brought some of it home in his truck. He cleaned up his truck at his home, and to dispose of it, he put it in the bottom of a burn barrel. That's what I think. Now, Zellner has a public theory that I don't know she's still holding, but she put it out in tweets where she said she thought the electronics were burned in the Jonda burn barrel. Mm-hmm. And she suggested she thought the Jonda burn barrel might be the barrel that the cremation took place in. And that's always, Bobby in his testimony also said he thought they only had 3 barrels, which has always sat with me wrong. Mm. Do you guys remember that?
There's conflicting stories on how many barrels they actually had. Some people say 4, some people say 2, some people say 3.
But there are pictures of 4. And,
correct.
And him on the stand saying 3, I think pissed off the DA.
Stephen said there were 4, right?
Yeah, because DA's story is that some of the cremains were carried over to the Jonda burn barrel on a golf cart for some reason. After they drove, or they stored Teresa's body in the back of the RAV4 because they didn't want to get blood on the garage floor or something. I don't remember all of the DA's story, but it didn't click to me as being very truthful, so I didn't find it important yet. So what I think happened there was burn barrels are a bad thing to carry things around in general because they have holes in them and their contents are leaking dirt out the sides of these holes all the time. So if you're actually moving them around, they're going to leak some stuff. I doubt they'd leak anything as big as these bone fragments.
Well, it's curious that during Earl's interview, they're asking if they had buckets on the golf cart.
And what did he say?
He talks about his mom having an ice cream bucket that she carries around with her. Didn't really answer the question.
Yeah, so it's more likely to spill something this size out of a bucket than a barrel. But I would think. I also think. I think I talked with Jarvis about this week, or maybe put in a thread. Putting these bones in that barrel, how likely is that actually to be noticed by the police? So if you're planting the bones there, is this really likely that the police would even notice they're there? I mean, we find out that these HRD dogs detect it readily, but was that something foreseeable by either suspect? If we decide it's not foreseeable, the idea that Ryan planted them there seems like a big risk. For Ryan, I think planting them at the Cuss Road cul-de-sac seems like enough. It gets the police not looking at him. Why carry some of them to the Jonda burn barrel? And then is this really meant to? It's almost like this is still a big piece of the case that could break. I don't believe it's a good idea to put those bones there to try to frame somebody.
The thing is, though, they dumped all the contents of each barrel into a tarp, and then they stuffed the tarp inside the barrel. How hard would it be to take one tarp and put it in another barrel?
Oh, or just accidentally
Because they didn't tag the barrel; they tagged the tarps too. I mean, they should have tagged both. They only tagged one thing.
Right.
No,
So
they take both.
yeah, so there is a theory that stuff got mixed up at the garage, right?
Yeah. Well, on the morning of the 7th, you got Jeremy Hawkins, which is with the evidence, requesting a dolly so he can move barrels.
Yeah, and then beyond that, you invert a barrel full of dust and ash, and you're going to get a cloud of dust and ash, and maybe some of it flows onto the floor off of the tarp you're aiming for, and maybe you don't discover it until hours later, and then where the hell you put it? You put it somewhere, right? You're sure not going to turn yourself in.
Yeah. I think if there's any swapping going on, it will be at the tiniest little piece,
Well,
if you're swapping barrels or contents, you swap the bones you find out of them, and you paper trail them to another content of the barrel. That's the easiest way.
This week we did pull up pictures of this stuff, and I believe it was in about a pint piece of Tupperware, or it wasn't probably Tupperware, but it was something similar to Tupperware. So this was not it wasn't a small amount of bones. But they were small fragments. I don't think there were any big fragments.
You mean the Janda barrel?
Yeah. Do you have a picture handy, Joris?
Not at the moment, no. But there were some bigger. There was a bigger shaft in there, and there was a piece with pupil casings in it. Also, the other ones I didn't. So that one has also pupil casings in it. So
yeah, I know we had a picture from the evidence photos. So this here, is this the John Byrne barrel? Yeah, so one of the problems is we never got the full color photos from the Eisenberg report. A few of them show up every once in a while, but and then we got these photos in these baggies or Ziploc bags. They actually say Ziploc on them. Wow. But these are the fragments, so it's hard to believe it would come out of the holes of a burn barrel, but they are pretty small.
Oh, there's more to that. Oh.
Yeah.
I got all the photos.
Yeah, there's a ton of photos, and does anybody have that set handy?
I got all the bones, pictures of all the bones.
Here was where I was showing that the Auto Trader actually had Barb's address on it.
Mm-hmm. If you want to pop it up, Millbilly.
Which one do you want to look at? I got all of them. Cranial bones.
Well, those are the evidence photos. Yeah. And then,
I don't want to just, sort of deviate too much, but the one thing that's always puzzled me about the bones is why, as mentioned in Series 2, why no of the vertebrae, the sort of central body? And any theories on Where
These are all the bones that were given back to the hull box.
those are them. Yep.
Yep.
That was the picture.
Were all the bones in the, for want of a better word, the pizza box? Were they all handed back as well? Everything. I'm
Yes.
sure I've asked this before, but every single bone that was either Teresa or potentially Teresa has been handed back.
Yeah. True.
And but what the expert in cremation said is there's usually a big part of the spine and the back ends of the ribs.
The problem is these are pictures of a picture.
Well, those were the ones we originally got, and yeah. Also, there was some selective cropping that actually left key things off. The picture of the dresser left the coins off, and it was getting them to give us better pictures was hard. That's actually Teresa's face. That's pretty terrifying.
Yeah. You know, one of the things that the dude always went on about was the fact that Kathleen Zellner wants to put that, particularly that picture that you've just said of the indentation and the suspected where a bullet has gone through.
Right.
Wants to get Chris Palahniuk to put that under a microscope to test it. What's it? The opaque something or other that.
No, it's
Clay's face goes on to that.
It's not opaque. It's
lead particles.
It's
yeah.
It's opaque to X-rays. It's
a dumb question.
X-ray opaque.
But being shot by a bullet and having a bullet wound through the skull, is it the same as being hit with a sharp implement?
Well, she also
like some sort of hammer with like a sharp edge to it.
She also wants to look at the bones, to look at the cut marks to see what tool could have made them.
Yeah.
And compare the bones to see if they were all by the same instrument.
Yeah.
Exactly, I think.
Yeah. But sorry.
Most of the experts have not. That's all the facial bones. It gives you.
Yeah.
For her two eye sockets, that's all that's left.
Yep. And a bit of cheekbone in it.
I think nucleopaque, or it's been a while since I studied the word, but it means that it's opaque to X-rays. That there could have been some things in the tires that are opaque to X-rays too. They have zinc dust in them, but most of the experts who reviewed the finding that bullets went through her skull did not try to refute it. So I do think even Zellner's camp sort of agrees that there were probably 222 bullets involved. If you look at the pictures, the arc of the bullet is less than a centimeter. So so a centimeter is a .254 caliber, and it's smaller than that. So it's something smaller than a 254.
So first of all, she's been, for want of a better word, clonked over the head, because that's how you end up with the blood spatter on the back of the RAV4. And then just to make sure that she's dead. But I was under the impression that some people have said that they were like execution style bullet wounds.
As for the bones, if she was in fact cut marks on the bones that had cut marks were on the pelvic bone, which implicates that she was dismembered, cut up,
or she was hit with something sharp in the can to break her bones up. I call it like a poker, but if there was a shovel used like a poker.
Any of you ever processed an animal?
Yeah. Well,
a deer. It's very
field dressing. I did.
All you do is just cut the tenon, and it's so easy. It's easier than you'd think.
Well, making the pelvis not look.
You can cut right through a pelvic bone with a knife.
Well, I don't have any experience trying to do that. So, And even with the deer, it was only field dressing. So,
Well, I've processed my own deer, so
yeah, I've seen movies of it, but yeah, I don't know what type of effort it took to do the various steps. But that's interesting. So what we're saying is, if it's just cut and it's not while it's burning being hit by something like a poker to break it up, which is what I thought was more likely. I think the bone after it's been burned partially would be easier to break. A shovel might be bad because it has a wooden handle. But definitely fire, you always tend to, even the wooden fuel, you need something like a poker to control the fire, to make sure that it doesn't get out of control in some area. And we all know that from even small fires.
But could those hesitation cut marks that Eisenberg is talking about, could she also be stabbed like? Is that, because we think it's a saw, but maybe it's a knife.
But that's why we want the trace evidence expert to review it. And
well, every hunter,
and that's why
when they go hunting, they bring a toolkit with them, so when they get their deer, they can do exactly that.
Field dressing, yeah.
Exactly. You got to cut through the pelvic bone to remove the urinal tract.
Yeah, or the dirty parts. And then also lighten it, because
the sharper a knife, the easier it's going to be.
And carrying it out of the woods isn't near as much fun as my brother-in-law made it sound.
No, all you got to do is quarter it up, pack it up, throw everything inside of it, carry it out.
Yeah, we didn't quarter it. We
make the animal into a backpack. Carry it out that way, depending on where you are.
Yeah, it does seem like. Did you look at the film of Bobby's Garage?
Mm-hmm.
Did you think he was pretty good with the deer? He had actually left the carcass pretty much intact, so it hadn't been butchered, but he had skinned it. He'd take
most of the meat was off of it. Yes, it was just the carcass
hanging, and then the broken off legs, the metatarsals, and
laying on the floor.
Were laying on the floor. Yeah, cleanly, and he hadn't made a mess of the area either. So.
No. Well, there's very, very minimal blood when you're butchering it.
Yeah,
all the blood is from when you initially gut it.
Yeah, and then
and it depends on how the deer was killed.
And then you hang it to drain it before you butcher it. Right?
Yeah, and it's also easier to skin it that way.
Yeah.
You cut around the arms, cut around the neck, and just peel the skin right back. Comes off like a glove.
Sorry to interrupt. But Milbury, I realise that we need to finish fairly soon because of your time constraints, and I would like to thank Magilla, Jerice, Milbury for coming on an hour earlier than planned. I hope that helps you out in Holland there, Jerice and Milbury. Can we carry on this conversation next weekend and the next weekend again for the benefit of the dude? I think that's absolutely fascinating what you've looked at, Magilla, Milbury, Jerice. I mean, you've been told this many a time before, and I don't mind embarrassing you again. I think it's just fantastic the work that you've done and the sort of efforts that you go to, and the research that you've done. Obviously, I mean, I'm just somebody that just sits back and just chats about it, havers on. But you guys, the evidence that you look at and the effort that you put into it is absolutely brilliant. So, if I can just thank you guys so much for coming on and again talking about this, and we'll see you all next weekend if that's okay.
All right, I'm in.
Should be no problem.
Excellent. Thanks very much.
Okay.
Yeah, enjoy the rest of the weekend, and thanks
I've
very
got a
much.
few hours left. And so does Milbury.
I gotta go to work.
Good. Yeah. Thanks for making the time, everybody, and thank you very much to everybody in the chat for your questions. We'll see you all again soon. Bye for now.
Later.